Welcome in, everybody. I am Ben Parker. That is Shane Ratliff. It is a privilege to have all of you with us. We are doing more people for the draft of the 2026 NFL draft. Again, just kind of getting a feel for these guys, laying some foundation, taking a look at them, maybe what we would like to see improve during the 25 season. We're going to get to that in just a minute. Shane, before we do, you and I and another guy did a very special show last week. Go ahead and tell the audience about that, and then we'll dive into tonight's draft pick possibilities.
So as you said, Ben, yourself and me were joined. Well, actually, I guess we joined uh, Simon Short on Simon and Friends. We got to be the friends on a deep dive into offensive line play in the NFL. If you are into offensive line play, or if you have an extremely long drive, or you have some downtime, because it's a doozy. It's a 3-hour podcast, but you can find us on Apple and Spotify. And I mean, we had a lot of fun doing it. I think if you're into it, you'll definitely enjoy it. It's one of those ones that if once you get into it, I think we flowed through pretty heavily. So always good to join some fellow Box Score Network fans and families. So just adding to the podcast realm that you can spend some time listening to.
I'll harp on this for just a second. And you can see the offensive tackles we're going to cover tonight here in just a second. But it is 3 hour show. I realize not everybody wants to listen to 3 hours. It's totally fine. I get it. But if you are interested in the offensive line, or if you're interested in where your team fell, you can loop through. We did all 32 offensive lines, and we spent maybe 5 to 10 minutes on each offensive line. We didn't rush through. We kind of tried to do it, give it some respect, right? So we spent a lot of time on that. And the audience probably knows this already, but Shane and Simon got much more technical than I tend to do it. I tend to look at a guy. What style is he? Is he winning or losing his battles? Does he look like somebody I really want or somebody I don't? If I were an NFL GM, do I like them for a certain style of offense that I've already got going? All of that kind of stuff. But still, we didn't homogenize this. We had three different opinions on every team, and we took turns agreed and disagreed with each other. So it was a really cool show. I really liked it. Shane liked it. Simon liked it. That's Simon and Friends over on Apple and Spotify. Shane, are you ready to get into tonight's offensive tackles, man?
I am ready.
For those of you in the audience, we've already done 24 draft prospects this summer for the 26 NFL draft. Those were divided between quarterbacks and wide receivers, 12 each, I think it was. So go over here on Pro Football Plus after this show. Go check that out. Tonight we're doing a 9-pack. We've got 9 offensive tackles tonight. 6 of them have a very good chance of being in the 26 draft. 3 more of them are on the watch list for the 27 draft. They just won't be in the 26 draft at all. But again, players we just couldn't help at least giving some attention to and talking about for a minute because they just look like they're going to be that fun or that good. So tonight, I couldn't even get them all on the screen, but this is tonight's group right here. Okay. First up, from the University of Miami, Francis Mauigoa, height 6'6", weight 315 pounds. I opted, Shane, not to put statistics up for these offensive linemen, and there are more statistics available than ever these days.
Mm-hmm.
They're still a little subjective, though, for my taste. I still feel like you really got to look at an offensive lineman more than any other position other than maybe quarterback to really gauge how good he is or whether or not you want him as part of your team. So I opted to just leave out the statistics tonight, and we're just going to talk about what we do or maybe don't like about these players. All right, Shane, take it away, man.
So I think the biggest thing about Francis is that he is a return to a high star, high talent offensive lineman that Miami used to produce on a yearly basis. He was a huge grab for Mario Cristobal, a former offensive lineman at the U as well. The thing about Francis is, like you said, Ben, I mean, he's 6'6". They have him listed at 315. He's way bigger than that. He plays faster and quicker than what you see from size, but I think by the time the year's over, his weight will be well above 315. Uh, he plays very similar to your traditional tackle. Um, wingspan, push guys outside. Miami's offense, as of late, has been a little bit more dynamic with a little bit of RPO mixed in there and some other things where they've
Yeah.
gotten him out there in one-on-one situations where he's gotten a chance to just destroy some defensive backs.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, I loved his pass blocking better than his run
Mm-hmm.
blocking, but I liked his run blocking too. But again, depends on what your flavor is, what you need as an offense. If I'm a team, and again, he's playing right tackle, right? I assume he's still playing that
Mm-hmm.
for Miami in this year. If I'm a team like Kansas City was, or some other teams that could really use an offensive lineman, and I need them to pass block, this is the guy I'm looking at right here. I mean, this guy's pass blocking, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, the one big thing that I saw out of him, he never seemed out of control. He always seemed
Mm-hmm.
in control. Like he just always seemed really comfortable. Like he always knew what to do. And so that was one thing I really liked about him. Athleticism wise, I felt like he was good, but not elite, as
Mm-hmm.
compared to, say, an Armand Membu, who I thought had just this elite athleticism. Do you feel the same way, or do you push him on up into that category, athleticism wise?
No, I would agree with you on that, Ben. I would also say that Membu is a hard guy to compare anyone to
Yes.
athletically
Yeah.
in that. But like when you look at some of these other guys, one to really bring up that way, you look at a Caden Proctor. There's literally nothing on a football field that he can't do. He's bigger, he's faster, he's stronger than Francis. So when you see that, you go, okay, what am I missing in that play style? I think, like you said, Ben, because I don't think he's an elite athletic talent, he plays under control and with really solid technique. So you don't see, he's not going to blow everybody away, and you don't see him always dominating, but you also don't see him losing reps. He would be one of those guys, and you mentioned about kind of the grading of offensive linemen, the statistics of offensive linemen. He's going to be a guy that PFF is going to love because his assignment isn't going to go wrong. Is he going to always win you a battle? No, but he's going to check the box that he did what he was supposed to do on this. Um, I the thing for him out of this draft is I don't see him. I don't think he's going to be a heavy riser. There's some other guys that we're going to talk about later where I think like a good season or really dominating at the combine is going to boost their draft status. I think Francis is going to be one of those guys where you can plug and play, but I don't see him. He's not going to be one of these Will Campbell top 10 picks by any stretch of the imagination in my mind.
Yeah, that's a great point because in a second I'm going to ask you as we go through here. I'm going to ask you one by one. Mauigoa first. Where again we're projecting ahead a year, so you can add in some projection if you want. But where do you think you would kind of be interested in him in the draft, whether it's top 10, first round, whatever? But let me read a couple notes first, and I'll let you get the final word here. I did see him sometimes blocking two people. He is
Mm-hmm.
so balanced. There were times where I saw him block one guy and then move on. I mean, I'm not talking about just share a double team. I'm talking about actually block one guy and then move over and block another guy. Or sometimes every once in a while, I saw him kind of half block two guys at the same time. He just had that good balance. Again, I didn't see dominance, but I saw balance and control is what I saw, and I like that. Again, I'm not suggesting dominance here, but I did see that. One thing you can comment on or not comment on because everybody always wants to talk about arm length. I did see him fall down a good bit during the short
Mm-hmm.
film that I watched, usually reaching for something that wasn't there anymore. And I don't know if that's an arm length thing or if that's just him being hyper aggressive and trying to reach something he can't reach. I don't care whether you comment on that or not, but that's some of what I saw. I liked what I saw. I wasn't just overwhelmed by it though. But if you would please, I'm just kind of end up here where you would think about drafting him possibly a year from now.
See, so the points that you bring up are very important in my mind, Ben. So, like you said, do you wanna? I'm one of those guys that the arm length thing doesn't really matter to me if I see enough film of them doing the job. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to lie. Would I rather have somebody that has longer arms that makes the job easier for him? Yes. But I
Right.
can work around that and I can watch what the person can do. Um, for Francis, though, I think he's there's a good chance that if he doesn't really dominate and clean up some of those things, like you said, he's on the ground a lot. He's on the ground a lot, and in the NFL, they want their tackles, especially, to be clean jersey guys. You know, that means they didn't fall over, they completed their block, and the ball's out, and the quarterback's safe as well.
Yeah.
Um, but when I see him, I'm thinking probably, depending on if everyone else stays healthy, I think he's a late second, early third guy. That's where I would put him in the draft. I don't think right now, from what I've seen, especially on tape, uh, I don't put him in that top run of offensive tackles right now.
All right. Love the info. And I'm with you. I love measurables. Give me all the measurables I can get. Hopefully they're outstanding. But if I like what I see on tape, I'll skip the measurables if I like what I see on tape enough. I'm in the same boat there. So I obviously we all want the measurables to be great, but sometimes they're not. So here we go. Next guy, Caden Proctor from Alabama. Mr. Caden, you already alluded to this, is 6'7" and 359 pounds. Um, when this kid was born, I was already 25 years old and had been out of college for 3 years. He grew fast, let's put it that way. Okay. 6'7", 359 pounds. Um, he's playing left tackle for Alabama. Tell us a little bit here about Caden Proctor.
So Caden Proctor was the 5-star number one offensive lineman pretty much from his junior year on, for sure. Uh, he's the oddity that went to Alabama, left Alabama, came back to Alabama. Um, he's an Iowa guy. He thought maybe this Alabama was going to run for him. Went to Iowa for a year. Came back right to Alabama. As we both talked about, Ben, he is gigantic. He could be the left side of your offensive line without a guard there. Like, he is that big. Um, the thing that makes him different, like we talked about Francis Mauigoa, uh, Caden Proctor is a road grader. When you see him block somebody, that's blocking out the sun. He's going to make that guy disappear. Um, I think his strength right now is probably, even though he is a left tackle, he's probably a stronger run player. I think some of that has to play into what Alabama's asked him to do in the last couple of years, and the play calling that they have, and with a more secure pocket passer, I think you might see some more of that. But it, you mentioned already, the big thing for him is intangibles. He is absolutely gigantic, and people are going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Uh, um, I will say, though, when you watch game film, not knowing, not sitting in on the meetings every single day, but there's plays that he leaves behind where I gotta imagine he made some big mistakes. He sometimes lets guys set up inside him and pin off his inside foot and get past him to the quarterback, which has always been a no for tackle play. You mentioned the aggressiveness where, like, Francis ends up on the ground. Uh, Proctor sometimes will jump set way too fast. Like, he thinks that he needs to outspeed everybody when you're as big as a house. You need to sometimes make that guy just go around you. Like, you don't have to jump out as fast. I don't know if that's a coaching thing where they've tried to get him to jump back faster or what it is, but you watch him against Tennessee. You see this happen a few times. Texas, he had some issues as well.
I'm gonna come back to you in just a second for final word and where you might think about drafting him, but I'll just throw in a couple of notes of my own here. You touched on it. He does still seem a little young from a mentality perspective. A little raw is not the right word for Caden, but he does still seem like he hasn't truly dialed into mastering his techniques. It's kind of what I felt like. And again, when you're 6'7", 359, I'm sure it's a little tempting to not get too dialed in, but it feels like he still has a lot more that he could do, and I already like what I see. but I would love to see him get even more serious this off season and heading into the 25 season about, let's hone this craft a little bit, because then you get to be to where you're not just very good, you could be unstoppable, if you really, dial it in. So I did notice that kind of youngish mentality still, I thought was hovering around here. And but the other thing I'll say is when I see 6'7", 359, and if I like the tape, again, after the 25 season, if I truly like the tape, I would love to have this guy for almost any NFL team. Just that size alone to go along with that just incredible run blocking, and you mentioned him swallowing players up. I especially would love to see it for a team that's trying to take advantage of these light defenses that have spawned over the past 5 to 10 years. The defenses are having to get lighter. They're having to drop a linebacker, put that guy on the bench, that third linebacker, pick up the nickel back. In a lot of cases, the edge rushers are now at 240 pounds on average versus what the 275 or 280 they were 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You've just got these, and even the linebackers themselves oftentimes are more geared towards stopping the pass than they are towards stopping the run. So I especially would love to see him on any team that's kind of serious about pushing around light defenses, and then let's build our passing game off of that. So
Mm-hmm.
I really I do like what I see here. I especially like that aspect of it. All right, final word on Caden.
Well, something you hit on, Ben, when you said you don't want to say it's maturity or, like a young player. The
Yeah,
word that kept on coming up to me is lacks consistency.
yeah,
I'll see him make some amazing plays, and then I'll see him, depending on talent that's against him and position of the drive, I'll see him give up on some plays that you'd like to see if you have all this size and all this talent. You should demonstrate it every single down. Um,
right.
I think the thing for him though, when we're talking about draft status and where he goes, his measurables are going to put him in the first round. He's literally going to have to
Yeah.
play bad to get out of the first round, where you're going to have some of these guys that need to play outstanding to work themselves in. Like you said, NFL teams, you're going to see 6'7", 359, and he moves really well for being that big.
Right.
You can't just, as much as the Philadelphia Eagles pick Jordan Mailata from a rugby field, you're not going to just find these giant dancing bears out in the wild everywhere. So when you can find somebody that big, and if you have a pretty established offensive line coach, you'd love to be able to mold the clay that is Caden Proctor.
No, that's exactly right. You look at NFL teams, the reason so many of the O linemen are at 300 or 315 isn't because teams don't want bigger guys. It's like you just said, there's not enough of these big guys who also have the talent it takes to play at the NFL level. They are not easy to come by, even though a lot of teams would really love to have these big guys. All right. We could talk more about Caden Proctor. We want to just, again, give all of you out there a feel for these players heading into the 25 season. We don't want to kind of shoot all our bullets all at once. We'll return to these guys either midway through the season or maybe toward the end of the season. We'll come back to these guys, kind of update the list, refresh the list a little bit. But that is Caden Proctor, Alabama. Next up, Jennings Dunker. I feel like this guy is a little bit of a character coming out of Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
He's 6'5", 315 pounds. And listen, he's an Iowa Hawkeye. So just right off the bat, you suspect this guy knows something about offensive line because they so often do. But Shane, go ahead and tell us about Jennings Dunker here.
Well, you mentioned the personality, Ben. Last year, he rocked a bright red mullet with a mustache. His claim to fame is being a two-time Hail Bale throwing champion.
Wow.
I mean, for the rest of the world, I don't know how much that means, but when you're an Iowa offensive lineman, it means a lot. He's a guy that has like so much personality where they say that people underestimate how intelligent he is. And when he's done like conversations for like right now is the time of year where you get the preseason conference media days and things like that. He's
Yeah.
been a big run for the Big Ten. he's a guy who I think is intelligent enough to where when you look at his size, um, he might be like a Barton that we talked about, where he played
Yeah.
tackle at Duke. You might move him to center because that's where he can be most effective. Uh, I mean, when you watch his tape, he gives everything you're looking for. He's going to go hard on every single play. Great technique. He plays well within that offensive line, and like you said, there's a look, there's a mentality of an Iowa offensive lineman, and he's going to be a poster child for that to continue on.
Yeah, it's interesting because unfortunately for Jennings, most of the tape I watched was versus Ohio State, and that wasn't his best tape. So I'm going to ding
No.
him for a couple of negatives here, but then I'll let you come back through because it is interesting. You mentioned maybe the move to the interior, maybe not though. So I'll ding him a little bit here, and then I'll let you finish up here and tell us kind of get the ship back up right again here. Um, anybody who's NFL worthy coming out of Iowa, I'm automatically interested in those. I just know I can get a certain amount of effort, certain amount of technique, certain amount of intelligence. I just know it. I know it. We've seen it time after time. So if they've got any kind of NFL talent at all, I'm already in. Okay. I did notice, unfortunately, against Ohio State. Let's see here. I do like the toughness. Didn't seem the fastest. We talked about some other athletic guys. He didn't seem like he was super fast. I noticed him losing hand battles, and
Mm-hmm.
you and Simon do a way better job of talking about hand to hand combat than I do. Even I noticed that he was losing some of the hand battles there in that Ohio State game. I do like the way he moves his feet, so he seems to be able to move his feet to kind of balance whatever struggles he's having. And then every once in a while, that Ohio State game, I noticed him getting pushed back just a little bit. It didn't seem like he was always able to just push guys around. So still like him though. But go ahead and give us the rest of here on Jennings Ducker and then where you might be looking at him in the draft.
So I think you're dead on in probably the worst game that he played last year as well, Ben.
What I thought, yeah.
I mean, it's not hard to see why you would have a bad game against Ohio State. Just the sheer level of talent that you're going against. But one thing that you talked about, and Simon and I and you discussed during that, offensive line regalia for 3 hours, is the thing that Jennings has the biggest difficulty with, and it shows up especially against Sawyer in the Ohio State game, is as a tackle, he tries to set into his chest with that initial punch. And if you don't have some weight behind you and you're not right on that, if you get a good speed guy that knows what he's doing, he's going to chop that hand down and then he's going to push you right to the
Yeah.
quarterback. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what Ohio State did. You also have to take your hands off Ohio State as Coach Johnson, one of the all-time greatest defensive line coaches. Just look at the defensive line that Ohio State has produced. As you mentioned, Ben, hard to compare that, but I think that was his worst game. I watched the film of that over again, um, but and I kind of highlighted that with maybe a move to center. I think he does a good job of getting his feet set. I think he does a good job of understanding that he's on the lighter end and what he needs to do. Um, Again, intelligent, but the thing that you mentioned that sticks out to me most, Ben, is I think he is low grade on the athletic scale. And it's
Yeah.
hard not to be a top end athlete and be a left tackle in the NFL now. He's a guy where I would see if it was me and I was in need of a center, I think he'd make an excellent center. Um, and I think although he plays left tackle for Iowa and is going to be one of their top guys, he's another guy where you could see where maybe he ends up playing on the weak side, just due to the fact that he's not as athletic as some of these, standout LTs.
Yeah. I totally agree with what you're putting out there. And I don't want to be clear so the audience doesn't misunderstand. I guarantee that Ohio State game was the worst game of any film he's got since he actually started playing. And they are loaded. You mentioned them being loaded. They are loaded. He had to go up against multiple guys who are already in the NFL now. I mean, not just one. You got one guy who's going to hit you in the mouth. You got another guy who's going to go try to get around the edge. You got another guy who's got long arms. I mean, that's what he had to go up against in that Ohio State game. But I do like what you're saying. Real quick question for you on this. Uh, I know NFL teams will think about it. What do you like? Do you like to try to add weight to a guy like this? He's 6'5" and 315. We've seen guys that height that are heavier. Do you like to try to add weight to him and then still push him towards center possibly?
So it's an interesting question you bring up, Ben. I think for you as an NFL coach to think that you're going to be able to put on real weight that this guy hasn't put on through 5 years of college, where he has been monitored every single day for his ability to try to gain that weight, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's hard for you to project that all of a sudden he's going to be able to put on usable weight. I think
Okay.
the time where you can think about that is like, say, if a guy was a late change, if Jennings had been a tight end for multiple years, and then like late in the career they moved him around. Now, when he was in high school, he was a pretty good athlete from what I've seen and read. Where he wasn't always an offensive lineman, but I think just like you mentioned with the way that offensive lines play now, it is way easier to hide somebody inside where you can give them help if they're going to be underweight than it is for you to be light and less athletic on the outside, because you have to have
Okay.
something. It's the same thing we talk about with wide receivers, quarterbacks. If you're going to be a number one guy, you have to have one skill set or athletic talent that is above everything else. Jennings is not going to make mistakes for you. He's always going to be in the way. He's going to make sure his protection is exactly what you're coaching him to do, but he's not going to get to the speed guy. He's not going to be able to outpower everybody. Like, there's
Right.
nothing that sits him out.
Right.
Where if Caden Proctor screws up, he's still 370 pounds. You know, when you're lighter and you make a mistake, it makes it easier for them to make that mistake look bad on you.
Jennings Dunker from Iowa. Everybody look forward to watching him play for the Hawkeyes this fall, and he'll be on an NFL team somewhere next year. Next guy, Spencer Fano from Utah, 6'6", so an inch taller, and 302 is the weight we're showing here. I've got a little bit of thoughts about Fano I'll share in just a moment, but I got to say, man, I can't wait to just watch this Utah offensive line, because we're going to cover not one but two guys from their
Mm-hmm.
offensive line tonight. And for both of those guys to be on the same team this year, it's going to be a lot of fun watching that offensive line this fall. But tell us about Spencer Fano.
Well, and the hard thing, just to kind of hit on it, Ben, is that last year they had absolutely zero quarterback play because everybody continued to get injured. And when
Yeah.
you think about if you had even anyone that could have stayed behind center for long enough with the offensive line that they have, you can see the way Utah plays ball.
Yes.
They are a downhill team. They are a punishing team. They want you to know what it's like to come through. Of all the guys that we watched on here, Spencer's tape was the one I most enjoyed watching. Um, I think I'd like him to gain a little bit more weight since we've been on the weight run.
Right.
6'6", he plays mean, he's athletic. Um, he's a guy that you don't want to have to fight in a phone booth, because he's going to bring every weapon and he's going to make sure there's only one person walking out.
Right.
If you want to go back and look at tape for him, you can look not last year, the year before against USC when they pounded a good USC team. There are some physical traits that Spencer plays with. Utah has done a great job of bringing in, we'll put the umbrella and say Polynesian offensive linemen. Spencer's from you. They just do a great job of bringing those guys that are in
Yeah.
Utah, keeping them at home. And again, we talked about Iowa. There's a way that an offensive lineman at Utah plays. And I think Spencer shows a dominance. And I think Utah is going to want to show that they're back after a very down year for them.
Yeah.
And I think the offensive line is going to be what carries them that far.
Spencer Fano, I love everything you said about him. What really stood out was the athleticism if you're an NFL team and you're looking for one of those blockers for zone run blocking, I feel like this is your guy. I'll let you decide this. I thought he was borderline elite athleticism. I mean, just watching him run around. And again, we've seen athletic guys who didn't pan out, but I like this guy. I like the way he hits. I like the attitude. I have a certain amount of faith in the players that come out of Utah. If they've got the talent, I know they're going to play a certain way with intelligence and toughness. He's got talent. They got the talent too. I really love the athleticism on top of that. You know, it's not just, oh, well, he's athletic. No, he's got the toughness. He's got the strength. He's got the intelligence, and he's got that athleticism. That really stood out to me. And I could go on more about him, but that was the one big thing here. I will ask you, he's playing right tackle. Do you keep him there in the NFL? Do you start to think about moving him over to left tackle? And then where in the draft are you thinking about him?
Well, I mean, since we've talked about offensive linemen as much as we have lately, Ben, you know my thought is I would rather have an all-star at the position he's at than we start trying to shuffle people around
Yeah,
to see what you can do. Does he have all the athletic talent to be able to play left tackle? Yes, without a doubt. I think his weight is a better reason in some cases for why you would keep him on the right-hand side. Um, I think, if you're talking like team model for what you'd look for, we talked about the Chargers in that NFL breakdown. That's what you do. You get a Rashawn Slater, you have your left tackle, you let him play left tackle, and then I bring in a super talented guy who's going
yeah,
to play right tackle for me. I think the better your offensive line as a whole, that gets you. The thing though is if you're predominantly a right tackle, and the teams are going to draft you as that hurts your draft stock
right.
because it's just not as sexy to say you're a right tackle. Um, and there's not enough left-handed quarterbacks in the NFL for you to be able to make your money to say, well, hey, maybe the left-handed team is going to be the one that gets me. Um, I love what you said. I think he has elite athleticism. I would almost like to see if he could put on some extra weight, and even if that makes him a tad bit slower, I would
Mm-hmm.
be interested to see where they would think the extra added weight versus the lack of a little bit of athleticism, because I think he's elite when it comes to athletic talent.
Yeah.
And I think truthfully with the talent he has, he could play across the offensive line, but I think it's way harder than people think to switch from right hand to left side when it comes to offensive line play. Um, it's a complete change in your mentality with your foot placement and everything like that. During the breakdown on the NFL, I likened it to you spent your entire time writing right handed, and then
Yeah.
the biggest test of your life, they say you can't use your right hand, you got to write with your left hand and make it legible. There's not a lot of people that walk around with that ambidextrous talent, and I think that's the level of difficulty when you're talking about moving an offensive lineman to that spot. So I would let him play on the right hand side. Does that drop him down? I think athletically in that he's a top 10 athletic guy, mentality wise, athletic wise. But I would not be surprised for him to be a round 2, round 3 guy, just because I think teams are going to put him as a right tackle and play him there.
This is a player that when I saw, I wanted him. And that's a big thing for me. Because listen, I can talk all I want to about hand placement or drive or athleticism. I just know when I watch the tape, I want this guy. And I
Mm-hmm.
almost don't care what team I have. I just know I want this guy. So he's a guy that come draft time would be very difficult for me to pass up on. And I'm a lot closer to where you are on a player like this than maybe some people that we hear. Not everybody, some people. I would rather, if this guy's been at right tackle, and he has, I would rather draft him as a right tackle and leave him as a right tackle, unless my coaching staff just said, hey, we really want to push him over to the left. We think he can do it. Aside from that, I'd rather just leave him there and let him be brilliant at right tackle. And you're right. That's going to drop him in the draft a little bit. Instead of being top 5, top 10-ish, it's going to drop him down somewhere, maybe top 20, top 30, right? I don't personally like building a roster that way. If I know I've got one heck of a football player who's going to be brilliant at a position, I don't care if it's left tackle or right tackle. I'll drop him into right tackle and I'll work on left tackle. You know, if I've got to put tight ends over here, I'll do it. Or if I've got to draft another left tackle 2 years from now, I'll do it. But that, you know, but you're right. That is going to drop him some if they do view him as a right tackle. So that's Spencer Fano. Any last words on Fano, Shane?
The one thing I was going to say, Ben, so like you said, you look at him and you just go, I don't know what, but I know that I want him on my team.
Yeah.
When I watch Spencer play, the thing that I saw most is that this is a guy that's going to play right tackle, and teams are going to let him go and kind of play around on things. And Philadelphia is going to move up in the second round and pick him before somebody else does. And he's going to go to Jeff Stoutland, and it's just going to be trouble. You're just going to go, what do we do? We just let them get another guy. That's what I saw. Just like how you're saying, like, he's a guy I fall in love with. He's a guy that's going to fall in the draft, and then teams are going to regret it because they thought they were smarter and they had another left tackle to pick, and this guy is going to be an 11-year player in the NFL on the right-hand side,
right?
And he's going to make people pay for that mistake.
Yeah, totally agree. I could not agree more with what you just put out there. Totally agree. And again, sometimes I do this. We all like the most talented players, and I'm not saying that he isn't, but there are times where the most talented player, I'm like, well, I see the talent, but I can do without that particular guy. Maybe a player who isn't quite as talented, I'm like, no, I love that guy, and maybe he is only a right tackle, or maybe he is only a nickelback, whatever. I just need that guy. That guy can play for me for a decade. I need him, and you know that's a big thing for me as well. Spencer Fano, Utah. These next few players, we're going to go through a lot quicker, and I'm going to have a lot fewer comments so you can hit them hard, Shane. I've got Isaiah World from Oregon, who is, if I've got my facts right, 6'8", 312, and we've got Blake Miller from Clemson, who is 6'6", 315. We'll talk about both these guys, but you take your pick here where you want to start.
I think you start with Isaiah World. I have him rated as one of the lower ones, but I think you look at sheer size and what he's done at Oregon, he's going to get some run. The thing for him is that he's going to move up on a talent level, playing with Oregon and having to deal with what they do and what they're asked of. Oregon's done a great job of kind of taking those tweener guys and have them plug and play once they make it to the NFL. I think Blake Miller in this run is kind of your classic tackle. He's going to make the right decision. He's going to make the right play. I don't think, however, that he jumps out on any particular level on what he does. So he's kind of like, I thought Miller in some ways reminds me a lot of Dunker, where you're like, okay, I don't see these huge splash plays, but I don't see a ton of mistakes. Where I think Isaiah World, just with the sheer size and what he can do, there's some times where you watch him play where you're just kind of awestruck at what he's going to be able to do against some guys.
All right, very good. That's Isaiah World and Blake Miller. I'm a little higher on World at this point. I do like Miller. Miller's pass blocking is fine. I thought it holds up. But there were times I thought he played a little high, looked a little stiff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought that he handled outside edge rushers very well. Like he kind of had a drop step that would handle that, but it also seemed like they were setting him up to kind of shoot inside sometimes because he was kind of, you know, over focused might be the wrong word, but maybe he just was setting up too much on the outside. He also looked a little awkward in run blocking, unfortunately. Not that he can't do it. He just looked a little more chunky. But I do like both these guys. I feel like they'll be in the draft. But Isaiah World, again, you mentioned that size is interesting to me. All right. Any final thoughts on World and Miller?
I agree with what you said on Miller and the comment that you made, Ben, where it looked like, you know, they were starting to set him up. That's another thing that, you know, there are defensive line coaches that sit there and they don't even watch the play. They're just watching the first step back of that offensive lineman. And if they can get a read, and Miller's a guy that it seems like they got a read on, he's going to tell you if he's pass protecting. And when he gives away a key like that, it's just like in Major League Baseball, you're tipping pitches. And when
Yeah.
your defensive line can know what's coming next, they're faster off the ball and they're going after him. And you could see some of that in Clemson. They had an offense that scored some points for him. They're looking to have a huge year this year. But if he can't pull some of those things together, it could be a dangerous slip for them.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed there for Miller and for Clemson. All right, that's Isaiah World, who transferred from Nevada to Oregon, and Blake Miller, who will be at Clemson this year once again. Let's go to that's all for the 26th draft, okay? But we've got three more guys available for the 2027 draft. We just couldn't pass up on, okay? So I'm going to rattle them off real quick, and we will talk about all three of them, but I do want to rattle them off here. First of all, from Texas A&M, Armaj Reed Adams, 6'5", 340. I think I've got the and I apologize. I think I've got the wrong picture up here, but I think I've got Caleb Lemou's picture here,
Yeah.
so I apologize with Armaj Reed Adams statistics. We'll talk about both players, okay? But I apologize for the mishap there. From Penn State, we've got Anthony Donko, 6'5", 280, and Jordan Seaton from Colorado, 6'5", 331. So Shane, I apologize. I've got a picture of Lemieux up here, who we'll talk about. But then we've also got Texas A&M's Armaj Reed Adams, who actually is part of our guard series. So let's just forget Reed
Yep.
Adams for the night. We'll focus on Lemieux. But take your pick, man. Donko, Seaton, Lemieux, where do we want to go?
So I think the first one I would talk about, Ben, is Seaton, because uh, the Colorado offensive line was much maligned the last couple of years. Seaton is a guy that came in, played well, just like you said, not going to be in the draft this year, but as an up and comer, really started to solidify towards the end of the year. And I think he's going to be a building block for them this year, because it'll be interesting to see how Colorado plays without a sheer vacuum of talent that left in this draft. So he sticks out. Anthony Doak is a absolutely athletic monster. The thing that happens for him is that, and I think Penn State supporters would agree with this, there's sometimes where he just doesn't play at the level that they're expecting him to play. They want him to be dominant every single down. They want him to, own games. And each of these three guys that we're going to talk about, they're all young, and it's a development level, but the sheer talent that they've shown, that's what separates them. As you said, Reed Adams is the guard at Texas A&M. We'll talk about him for another show. But Lamu for Utah, as we mentioned, two guys that are, maybe top 10 tackles in the college football. And Lemieux is a young guy who absolutely dominated. I think that he has a chance, probably even other than Caden Proctor, I think he has a chance of this group of 9 to be the guy that goes the highest. Just in what you've seen for what he's been able to do so early on in his career, it's gonna be hard for him not to shoot up. He was one of the ones I mentioned to you early on, Ben, when we first talked about doing this, where he's one of those guys that's not draft eligible, and he turns into the same as when we did the show for the wide receivers. It's the guys that you can't pick this year that are the guys that you're watching. He's going to be the guy that I keep the most attention to because I think this year is going to be a dominant year for him, and I think Utah needs it.
See, that was the emotions I felt as I watched these three players. And again, just to eliminate confusion here for the audience, Armaj Reed Adams, we will talk about him in 2 weeks, okay? So he's coming up, Texas A&M. But the picture of Caleb Lemieux, who we're actually talking about tonight, I really liked Lemieux, and that was the second guy. Again, I like several of these 9 players that we talk about. I like most of them, but there were 3 guys that I was like, I really, really want that guy, and Lemieux was one of those guys. I was like, Lemieux is a guy I really, really would love to have on my football team, whenever he's available, and if I can get a hold of him. Utah going to be crushing it this year. But Donko was the other one from Penn State. Now, the size has got me thinking about where to put him. I'll let you answer that here in a second, if you feel like it. But boy, when I watched Donko play on the field for Penn State, I'm like, wow, this. I just really, really want this guy on my team. I like that athleticism. I like that talent. I like that skill set. That's a guy because I like Seaton too, but Donko was a guy who was like, man, if I'm in the draft in 27, I'm going to have a real hard time passing up on him if I know where I want to put him. But what are you thinking about that? Where would ultimately you like to put him at the NFL level?
I think the thing for Donku, especially for these guys aren't, your 25-year-old with an extra year of eligibility offensive tackle. So
Yeah,
it's not out of the realm for Donku to be able to put on. I mean, for a normal person to be insane, but it's not crazy for him to think that he could put on 40 pounds and play at 320 and be 6'5", and people wouldn't ask the same question.
right.
Um, I think, like you said, Ben, with the way that he plays, I don't see his mentality being better suited for you to move him inside. So I think that they're going to try to put some extra weight on him. I think he demonstrates athletic talent playing out on the left hand side and being able to be a protector over there. Penn State's offense with Andy Kanicki does an amazing job of moving things around, even putting him as extra tight end and then having him drag across the line to just blow people up. Um, you know, those are things he's going to have an opportunity to do. The big thing for him is I think you mentioned maturity later on with like Caden Proctor.
Yeah,
I think he needs to grow up a little bit. I think he had some rough games when they needed him to play more dominant. Again, I hate to keep harping on Ohio State, but his team did not look great against Ohio State. Again, completely understand, hard to put against that, but uh, he's going to have to button some of that stuff up. The Big Ten is going to be competitive again this year, um, and I think if he can put some solid weight on, I still think tackle is his spot because I think if you're 6'5" and 280, playing guard is going to be difficult. I don't see him as a center.
yeah.
So you're just hoping you can put weight on him.
That makes me feel a lot better because when I I look at that talent and that athleticism. I hate to shove that inside. So when you're telling me, hey, he's still young, he could still add the weight, and that would make sense to leave him out there. I feel a whole lot better about that. But listen, Donko, Lemieux, and then Fano. I do not want to pass those guys up in the draft. I like the other guys. I can use them, but those three players, man, I'm really going to struggle to pass them up. And then you mentioned Jordan Seaton. I'll just kind of hit on the college flavor here for a second, not so much NFL. With Colorado, it's going to be interesting. This is kind of a big year for Dion. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have that high flying kind of skill position talent anymore, but can he transform the team into something else that still wins there at Colorado? Seaton is sure going to help that. So, without Shador and without Travis Hunter there, without the other Sanders there, can they start to really translate this into a real football program that can, keep hanging in there from year to year? We'll see with Dion. All right, Shane, excellent work, man. This is 9 offensive linemen again. They'll shuffle up and down the board for us. We'll view some of them differently a year from now. Some of them will like even better than we already love them. So everybody stay tuned with us. This will be over 30 draft prospects we've got here, and we've got the interior offensive lineman coming in 2 weeks. In 4 weeks, we've already done 12 wide receivers. We're going to do 6 more. Okay, we've got 6 more wide receivers coming. So we are loaded. This is not the dead time for us, man. This summertime, we are loaded with a lot of good work here. So, Shane, final thoughts here on anything you want to cover.
Well, I think, like you said, Ben, with this group, it's a dynamic group. There's a lot of different body types in here. Um, One thing when you're talking about the summertime that I always like as a guy that loves and follows college football probably the most of all the sports. Bruce Feldman comes out yearly with his freaks list. There's going to be a lot of guys that we just talked about tonight that are going to be on that list. When you're talking about sheer strength and size,
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll get all nine that we discussed today, but I think there's going to be quite a few of them that are going to be inside that top 100.
Totally agree. The freaks list is a lot of fun. Some of the wide receivers, a couple of wide receivers we talked about. Again, that's not always, hey, top 20 draft picks, but it's just, hey, if you're looking for sheer athleticism, guys who can run and jump and do all of that, this is your kind of guys right there. So, Shane, excellent work tonight. We are coming back with another full house of offensive linemen in 2 weeks, and we look forward to that. So, everybody, thank you so much for being with us. This is Pro Football Plus. Hang with us all year long. We do a lot of roster building work, draft prospects work, free agent work coming in January and February. We're deep on all of it. Okay. So hang with us. Thank you, everybody. Have a great one. Goodbye.